evening, Ken. How are you? Ken?
Okay.
Yes, good evening, commissioners and airport staff. I'm calling the meeting of the Palm Springs International Airport, October 19, 2022, 5:30 meeting to order. At this time, I'm requesting Commissioner Todd Burke to lead us to the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke. Knowing that to Christina, the agenda was posted November 22nd. I'm requesting at this time a roll call, please.
Yes, please, commissioners, unmute your mics at this time. Commissioner Adams,
Present.
Breslin,
Present.
Badillo,
Present.
Burke,
present.
Corcoran. Corcoran is joining at the moment. Dada,
Here,
I want to leave you in a good position.
Feltman,
If at all, I
Here.
maybe I should get here before I leave. I don't know.
Hedrick,
Here.
I extend my onboarding.
Hughes is
paperwork from the
excused.
House over to New York. And I got hung up in Memphis.
One
So,
moment while I mute. Martin. Martin. Miller,
Here.
Payne,
Present.
Pye,
Here.
Schmitz,
Here.
Salama. Salama. Suero,
Here.
Wheel. Wheel,
Here.
Wiseman.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
thank you, Christina. I appreciate that. At this time, I will entertain a motion
Hard,
for
yeah,
the
no, I know.
acceptance of the agenda, please.
So moved.
But if you could hire somebody, use the master spreadsheet.
Kevin Corcoran, Isaac.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I muted him because there was sound in the background, but that was a second from Vice Chairman Corcoran.
Correct.
Any changes to the agenda? I believe, Christina, we were going to move some items up, correct?
Yes, I believe Vice Chairman Corcoran is requested to move the concessions RFP item. That is item 10C. He'd like that to be heard after item 9B this evening.
Terrific, thank you. Is the exchange accepted by all the commissioners?
One clarifying point, is it after 9B is in boy or 9D is in David?
That is 9B is in Boyd.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing none, I will at this time open the public comment. The public comments is limited to 3 minutes of any subject within the purview of the commission. Christina, do we have anyone from the community who would like to speak this evening?
And Chairman Dada, we do not have any speakers that are scheduled for this evening's meeting, but we will give it a moment to see if anyone would like to raise their virtual Zoom hand at this time to speak in public comments.
So if we have no hands, at this time, I will close public comments and move on and entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our regular September 21st, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any changes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Seeing none, introduction and presentation. Do we have any presentations?
We do. I'm sorry, we do not have any presentations this evening.
Got it. Do we have a new commissioner representing the county of Riverside? Commissioner Slama join us or not?
He does not seem to be with us this evening.
Then we will get him an introduction at our next meeting. Having said that, we will move on to the city manager's report.
Chairman Dada, I don't believe Teresa is here this evening to speak. If she pops on, we'll let you know.
Thank you so much. So we move now on to discussion and action items 9A and B. And whoever is doing the presentation, can we make it please a brief presentation and move forward?
Yes, this evening we have Public Arts Commissioner Gary Armstrong with us to present both staff reports. Gary, I see that you're unmuted. Please present your staff reports. Oh, you muted yourself. I'm sorry, I confused you there. Sorry.
Sorry.
There you go.
I first of all, I appreciate you taking time. I know this is probably not the most important of things that the airport is dealing with at the moment. These are two items that this is part of the pro forma approval process that the different commissions do. One of the items that you saw in the report, inertia, is in existence in the airport right now. And that was a temporary art piece that was donated, and they would like to make it a full acceptance into the Palm Springs Permanent Public Arts Collection and keep it in place in the airport. The Public Arts Commission has approved that motion, and now we bring it to the Airport Commission for their approval before it then moves on to City Council to finalize it. The second item is a piece that was the estate of the artist. Excuse me for one moment. Has donated a piece that they thought was appropriate for Palm Springs. He was a notable Palm Springs citizen, very involved in social and cultural issues. And his representative presented this piece to us called Banned Booty, and it was a collection of pieces that were banned during the 9/11 crisis and what things were not brought and allowed into the airports. He's created this sculpture, which the information is on the report there, as you can see. And his representative has confirmed that they will donate the piece in full. They will donate all installation costs as well as all future maintenance costs. So this is not anything that will impact our budget in any way, and it will not impact the airport budget. Now, the challenge is it is a large piece. It is 1.5 feet wide, 30 inches tall, and 22 feet long. However, we found a place that we were at the airport the other day, and there's a place that we thought it would work well, not knowing what was in part of your future plans for renovating the airport. And that's right when you walk in the front doors, there's an opening over to the right-hand side. It looks like there used to be monitors overhead. And it's a wall that is 28 feet long, and there's nothing on it currently. And we thought it would be a nice place there because it welcomes the visitors and people picking up residents and anybody who's arriving into Palm Springs as well. So we also are interacting with the museum, and we are looking into rotating the collection that's currently in the airport. There's some pieces that have been there for a while that we feel need to be moved around, and some other new pieces that we think need to be put forth and on display within that area as well in the promenade. That is in the future, but we're just wanted to let you know what our future intentions are. Okay. Are there any questions at all for me on these two pieces? Gerald Adams.
Do you have an image to share with us of the Banned Booty?
Yes, they're all in the staff report. I assume you've all read that. The images and the dimensions and the materials and everything is in there. It's a very in-depth piece supplied by the artist representative. Great. Todd, you're on mute. Oh,
Thanks, Gary. First of all, I really like crushing inertia. I was on the council or the committee when it first came. I think it's perfect in its current location. I certainly would be of a mind to continue that in its place. I can see the photos that you included in staff report. They're a bit of a side view, so all I can discern is there are things like scissors and some other items in there. So I'm pleased to see that we're not considering this post security. So my initial concern would be anything that could be security related. And that's the only comment I have on that. So thank you for your time and thanks for your work.
You know, that was one of my issues as well. And I even, when it was presented, I expressed to the artist representative that this being 30 inches tall, that's counter height. And they need to know people will put a coffee cup on it or any sort of things on there. And they ensured that the material that it is made of is very sturdy and theoretically damage-free.
And cleanable.
Theoretically.
Any other questions?
I have
One
a question
question.
for staff.
Scott, I think you had a question?
Yes, yes. My only concern, and I think the pieces are fine. I mean, I think art is for art itself, its sake for itself. And whether we like that art or not like that art, I think it should be displayed. And I'm happy that the airport is participating in the public art. I think that's fine. The one question I would have for airport staff is that there's a lot of renovations planned.
Right.
And so I really need to make sure that Harry and his staff are in agreement with the locations that you're recommending, because space is tight in the terminals and there are long-range plans out there. And so before I think I could vote on it, I'd like to get what Harry's feelings are about this. Not necessarily that he likes the art or doesn't like the art, but you know, the location, because that one piece is rather large.
And I would just say, Scott, that my feeling is art can be in the permanent collection, but not in a permanent location.
Okay.
And we can move things around as necessary.
Okay, and that's my second question. So you answered that. Thank you very much. And so I'd like to hear what Harry has to say.
Commissioner Miller, thank you for the question. So where the proposed location of the art is going, right now, the only concern I have is that we've relocated Flair Airlines to the ticket counters just north of that. So their queuing would go just past that art piece. And I'm not necessarily concerned, you know, about the visibility. I think it would get a lot of visibility. But I am concerned about the constraints we have in terms of circulation.
So maybe what I'd like to request the art commission is to have a plan and a B plan and for the placement of the pieces, and work with airport staff for the A plan and the B plan. Because I have no problems with placing the art there. And as long as staff feels it's safety for the public, and there's no damage to the art, because I think that's really important, then you know, I'm all for it.
Harry?
Are the hands up questions?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think Commissioner Payne, you had your hand up next.
I did, thank you. Just a question of protocol, Gary. Did you arrange a time with Harry's staff and you walked around with the airport, pre-security, post-security, and you're recommending this particular place after consultation with airport staff? Or did you do something else? I was a little unclear when you first began.
Thanks for asking. So no, the protocol was we were gauging your interest. And we just walked through where we did not have security passes. And we thought, well, this is a place it could go, knowing it's not the only place it could go. I believe we have a request into our City Hall representative to get us a security pass on a tour, because majority of our existing collection is past security. So that's, again, we're not set on this place, and this location may be even great for 9 months, and then it needs to move to another location.
Got it. So basically you, like anybody, you walked in, took a look around, And this is kind of your first, I'll call it stage one, presentation to airport staff and to the airport commission.
And to gauge your interest in this particular piece. Again,
Got
this
it.
artist has other pieces, you know, we want
Yeah.
you guys to be part of the process through the decision making.
Got it. So my 2 cents would be maybe more formalized work with airport staff so
Yep.
that, to Commissioner Miller's point, a lot's going to come down very quickly. Understand that you're flexible in moving things around, but airport staff probably knows from a phasing standpoint what's going to happen when, and it might be much more efficient and effective if you came back with Harry and his staff and said, we've talked, we think this is for this time, et cetera, and then we could vote on it, because I don't know what I'm voting on. So I think there's absolute interest. I echo the comments of Commissioner Miller and others on the commission, Art for Art's sake. Just would love to see, you know, alignment with staff on the location and how any problems got ameliorated. So my 2 cents.
Excellent.
Commissioner Feltman, I believe you had your hand up next.
Yeah, this is, I think, for Harry. When art pieces are introduced into the airport, is there a term that's been agreed upon with, I presume it's all with the Arts Commission, or how does that work in terms of an end date?
Yes, that's usually negotiated. So, you know, the airport, you know, can negotiate that one-on-one with the artist, can negotiate with the Arts Commission on that. We don't necessarily have a preference on a term, mostly because we'd like to build out our arts program here. So the more art that we get in, you know, it's helpful to that cause. But, you know, there's no set established term. We can certainly be flexible on that.
Okay, because the gentleman, Gary, mentioned that some of the art is getting stale, and I do feel like we should have a term that can be extended, but there should be some term that everybody knows this is coming to an end. I used to live in San Francisco. SFO had pretty much, I don't know what their term was, but in the United Terminal, which is mostly what I used, you would know basically every 3 months, and I'm not suggesting 3 months is the term. They have a long exhibition space, and you knew you'd see something new and interesting, or new and not interesting, whatever the case may be. I just have concerns. I know the arts people are very excited about getting art in public places, and I think that's wonderful, but I also see the possibility that, like, lots of art just gets placed and is kind of left there forever because there's no end point in time to discuss, is it time to move on or is it time for it to stay? So I would propose every piece have an end date, and we go back to the pieces that are there now and find end dates for them.
Thank you. And we're taking that into account as we start to build out that arts program. That's absolutely what we will be looking at.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wiseman, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that. I agree with Commissioner Miller's thoughts that we really do have to clear this with the airport staff and make sure that it's not going to impact the airport operation. But I also wanted to add that I really do think the piece is awesome. It's really cool, and it'd be a great addition to the airports. I guess the one other thought I had is we should have an understanding if the future plan changes and the piece does have to be relocated after it's installed, who would cover those costs?
Gary, you're muted.
Question.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in. The estate of the artist said they will cover all costs for future maintenance or any moving or things like that. I would even suggest a piece of this scale could be used if there is an area where there is future construction and you're doing some sort of wall before you unveil something. This art could be a way just to sort of say there's something interesting happening here. Come back in a year sort of component. The thing I like about this piece is it's substantial, but it's movable. Yeah, it doesn't feel sort of picayune, you know, like a lot of pieces of public art. And there's something engaging about it. It's, you're not just walking by and saying, oh, it's a nice metal circle, you know.
Vice Chairman Corcoran, you were next.
Hey, I just wanted to make a pitch while we're on this topic. To take a look at what's happening in the ticketing area. Harry, I don't know if the wall that's opposite the actual check-in desks is there temporarily or whatever, but there's zero color or zero art in the ticketing area. And even if we had some sort of a series of photographs or something, just to bring a little bit more color and something that's more interesting, I'd love to see the Art Commission or the staff consider that as well. Because right now there's nothing there. And again, I defer to you, Harry. If there's some reason why that is, or temporary walls or whatever, let us know. But it just seems like that first impression when you walk in to check in your bags, it's pretty bland. And wondered if there was any ways that we should be looking at that, or working with the Art Commission, we could get their help to try to consider installations for that area.
The answer is yes to that. So the challenge that we have just in the main terminal in general, and really facility wide, is just the spatial constraints with queuing and circulation. So when it comes to things like monumental art, that can be a challenge. But in terms of paintings and murals, things like that, that's a little easier to incorporate within the space. So we certainly are open to that.
So a challenge to the Art Commission is help us with that as well.
Yeah,
because that's an area that really needs attention.
I will say on top of that, and this was going to be the last part of my presentation with you guys, is I'm sort of doing a effort of going to every commission that we're involved with. And when I joined, I was really dismayed how many commissions are sort of sacrosanct and they don't interact with each other whatsoever. And I think we all should be interacting with each other. As I was driving up to look at the airport today, I noticed there was a lot of areas where you turned off the irrigation and the dead grass. And I thought, you know, that'd be a great place for a big piece of art. You know, you don't need landscaping everywhere. You could use some great art, and then you just have DG and it would look amazing. And it would really show the beauty of Palm Springs. There's 3 pieces in Palm Springs that have been around for 20 years by the artist John Clement. They're sort of squiggles, one's by Regal Cinemas, one's in the Francis Stevens Park, and other one's on
Recording in progress.
And we're moving those because we think they need to be recited and they need to be shown in a beautiful fashion. And so that's why we're sort of revisiting all the artwork that we have in our collection, not only because a lot needs to be redone, but it can be better displayed. And that's, again, one of the goals we're doing with the promenade area within the airport as well. What can we do better, and what needs to be reinvigorated? As you said, you want to make things look good.
Any other questions?
Just one other question I have, and that is about insurance.
Yep.
Who insures? Is it the Public Art Commission or the city that insures the art that's installed in the airport? Or is it the airport that insures the art that is installed there?
My understanding, it's the overall city insurance policy, and it gets evaluated that way as well.
Okay. And I would like definitely to second the commissioner about San Francisco's airport. I'm sure many of us have been up there and it's beautiful. And I would also like to push the Art Commission to help us with art. If we could get even 2/3 of the way to where San Francisco airport is, I think we'd have a spectacular collection.
Great.
And that really would be great. And I think you've heard many of the commissioners want a lot more art. So I think you're getting a big warm welcome on that particular thing.
So great. If there's no other questions, I will just end and say, as I said, I agree. We need to be working together. And Christina Brown has my contact information. And perhaps 1 or 2 commissioners could volunteer to interact with me, and we can sort of walk through the airport and identify places that need to be enlightened and beautified. So as I said, just have Christina contact her, and then she can forward me your contact information, or vice versa.
And again, thank you one more time on behalf of the commission to the entire Arts Commission for coming down and doing this presentation. And we absolutely look forward to working with you and your commission in the future.
Chairman Dada,
Yes.
would we like to make a motion to extend the artwork display Crushing Inertia too?
Would like to or see entertain a motion to extend that.
So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the first piece, the continuing use of the first piece, and we defer acceptance of the second piece until there is an agreement between the director of the airport and the Arts Commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Hendrick. I will entertain a second.
I second that motion.
So we have a second from Commissioner Burke.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, thank you again one more time. At this time, I just would like to let all of you know that due to a conflict, I will be exiting and Vice Chair Cochran will take over. And I believe we're gonna move to item 10C, which is, I believe, our City Attorney Jeffrey Bellinger. So thank you, Jeff. And thank you all, and I will see you. And I believe our next meeting before I leave will be November 22nd, same time at 5:30.
Chairman Dodd, I just wanted to note that we haven't had any communication with the commission to let them know that we were considering moving the November 16th meeting.
Correct.
The regularly scheduled November 16th meeting. We are going to move that to Tuesday, November 22nd, in order to allow more time to prepare the documents to present to the commission on the concessions RFP award. So when we adjourn the meeting, we will be adjourning to Tuesday, November 22nd at 5:30.
Thank you, Christina. You're a lifesaver. We move on to item 10C, and Vice Chair, show is all yours.
Thank you, Aftab. This is an update on the concessions RFP to let the commissioners know where we stand in the process of evaluating opportunities, or actually evaluating each of the proposals for the RFP and what next steps are going to be. And we've invited Jeff to join us tonight to give us an update on the process, decisions that have been made so far, and to make sure we're all on the same page moving forward towards the operations committee, getting the recommendation, as well as all of us, the rest of us, seeing it on the 22nd of November. So I'm going to yield the floor to Jeff Ballinger and ask Jeff if you would pick up the discussion. Jeff, welcome. Jeff, welcome.
Well, hello, everybody. And I apologize. I'm driving back from a meeting in Long Beach, so I apologize for the background noise. I'm certainly happy to answer any legal questions. In terms of the process, as I understand it, the bids are moving forward. I think there was a evaluation process that occurred either earlier this week or last week by the evaluation panel. And I believe the results are going to be finalized this week, maybe tomorrow. Maybe Harry has more information in terms of the process after that. I was under the impression that there was a question, maybe a legal question or a process question, procurement question about the process moving forward. So Harry, if you're more familiar with the steps moving forward, then I can weigh in on the legalities and the procurement process.
Sure, Jeff. I actually think Victoria is going to pitch in on that and then
Okay.
follow up with questions.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. Good evening. I hear an echo, sorry. So I just wanted to go I'm sorry. I hear an echo. Yeah.
Please mute your Zooms, please. Please mute.
It should
your
be
Zoom.
fine. It should be fine now. It was Jeff's phone, so I've muted him.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I just wanted to give a brief overview of where we're at, where we started, and then where we're at, and then what our future plans are for the concessions RFP. So towards the end of 2021, the commission voted for the airport concessions program to be a priority of focus for the city council's visioning session that took place back in 2021. So that was one of the priorities of the commission to move the RFP forward so that we can start soliciting for new concessions, because the program or the existing concessions agreement expires April 30th, 2023. So in May, we had the airport commission, some of the members of the commission take a look at the RFP. They provided comments and input on the scope of work. There was even discussions about the evaluation process. And we worked together, we compiled a very sound RFP that we put out for solicitation on June 13th. And that RFP consisted of looking for a concessions program that had 5 packages. So it had 7 retail locations and 5 food and beverage, and then 3 separate blank slate locations. And the biggest thing of the RFP was to, identify the airport's goals. And we identified the timeline, the instructions to the proposers, the conditions of the procurement process, the scope of work, the proposal format, the evaluation process, the rating criteria. We also requested their financial performance. And then we even gave them a sample agreement that the airport and the city were working with the attorneys to make sure that was already prepared and ready to go. So once we were ready to award, that agreement was already completed. We had advertised for the RFP for a total of 98 days, which is a lot longer than our normal process. We wanted to allow the opportunity for regional, local, national brands to submit for their proposals. We did our pre-proposal conference back in, I want to say, July, and we had about 40 attendees, local and national and regional brands were here. So, I mean, we had a really good turnout. I'm not sure what the last turnout was when we started this process the first time, but we had a good turnout. We walked all the attendees through some of the most problematic areas that would most likely require most of the capital investment. We showed the blank slate places that were ideally for local companies to bid on, but we allowed it for everyone, of course. And then we walked through all of the retail and food and beverage locations, and then the other blank slate locations to show everyone this is what you're getting. They asked questions. We asked them to put it in writing so that we can respond in writing, so everybody got the same answer on everything. Our proposals were due on September 22nd, and we put together an evaluation committee and that consisted of senior levels airport staff, the planning department, and 2 outside evaluators, which included one from Greater Palm Springs and one from the Steer Group, which is the airport's concession consultant. We evaluated the proposals for the compliance and to determine the qualifications of the proposers. We did have over 60 companies register as prospective bidders, and they received the RFP documents as well as the addendums. We had over 30 registered local participants on Planet Bids. And out of all that, we ended up having a total of 3 proposals for the retail package, 2 proposals for the food and beverage package, and 2 proposals for the blank slate number 2. So blank slate number 1 and number 3, they were not bid on by anyone. The evaluation committee reviewed the proposals and then selected the most qualified concessionaires based on the evaluation criteria in the RFP to do an interview the week of this actual past week. The Monday and Tuesday, we were in interviews all day long, and we were asking questions, they were asking us questions, and we were going through the evaluation process. So we've calculated all of our ratings and we've sent those into procurement. And now tomorrow, actually, we're going to be doing our deliberation. We're going to see what the individual evaluators' ratings were and who was the best or most highly rated based off of the qualifications in these the criteria scope of work. After this, we intend to take this contract or take our recommendations to the full commission and allow the commission to make a recommendation on our selection based on the procurement process that we followed. And then we intend to award the concessions agreement on December 15th. That's the last city council of the year.
I've got a question.
Scott,
So have you guys done any sort of reconnaissance as to why we had, 40 vendors at your walkthrough is outstanding, quite honestly. My experience in this stuff, in doing concessions for airport, that's actually a really good number. So, and then why such a large drop off of people who actually are turning in bids? Because, with two, that's not, a robust number. And I think it puts the airport kind of a bit behind the 8 ball in that. So has there been any kind of reconnaissance or any type of, analysis of why there was such a huge drop off?
Commissioner Miller, I have a couple of answers to that. I'm going to weigh in here.
Okay.
So the first is many of the proposers or vendors or interested parties that came out are actually partnered with master concessionaires. So while there were 40 attendees and while there were only 2 or 3 proposals based on the package that was being bid, more than a number of those proposals have more than 10 or 20 different vendors assigned to them already. So it's the joint ventures that are kind of consolidating that number. The other part of that, though, is just the dynamics of the industry right now. So we've got some master concessionaires that chose not to bid just because their market really is either in retail or either in food and beverage. And for them, Palm Springs right now, based on our facility constraints, based on the market, based on the airlines that we're serving, it just wasn't appealing for their business model. So as we start to grow physically, that will likely change. The interest in that will likely change, but that will also contribute to this process.
So as a follow-up question, what are we going to do about the areas that were not bid at all?
So the areas that were not bid at all really are truly blank slate areas. In other words, they were never occupied to begin with. We were just trying to make extra revenue. With the proposals that we have in front of us, we have more than enough in terms of not only provisions and concessions for the passenger, but also local talent that frankly bid on these packages where we're able to serve the airport for a little while without a problem.
And I do want to add to that, Harry, that those blank slates, there's no infrastructure, there's no water, utilities, nothing. So literally it would be coming in and bringing in that pop-up, that infrastructure, and bringing that into the airport. So, and like Harry said, there was a lot of local participation that partnered with the bigger companies, and it was quite impressive.
Commissioner Feltman, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I have a question about the inclusion or exclusion of the of Airport Commission members on the review committee. And what I would like to know, it's a 2-part question. I would like to know whether this was just sort of a continuation of the cultural attitude of the former city manager who didn't want to include the commission in serious deliberations on particular matters, or is there an actual legal reason? Because I've been told it's a legal reason, but I want to know what that is. And two, in that context, Visit Greater Palm Springs. I know I'm on the board of that, so I have nothing against Visit Greater Palm Springs, but I'm curious to know why they would be included, but commissioners who are actually members of this commission with some degree of oversight role, all the limits, it's been explained to us, and we all remember them. It's only a couple of weeks since that was done. What the difference would be between the two? Thank you.
So that was my understanding of why I was here. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned oversight. In talking with procurement, who does a lot more of these than I do, they will tell you that they've never seen a body, whether it's a recommending body like the Airport Commission or a final decision-making body like maybe a city council, participate in that panel selection process. Because if they do, then you have essentially the same people who are involved in the panel selection process serving in an oversight capacity, and you don't have that checks and balances. Whereas the way it was set up here, and you've got a panel of industry stakeholders, including Visit Palm Springs, making the first pass at it, giving you all their thoughts, and then that allows you and all of you to weigh in on it and oversee it and kind of do that checks and balances without having any members of this commission who have already weighed in on that previous level. So that's the best way I can explain it, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions. But the procurement process, because we're dealing with public funds, you want to be a little bit more strict in having that oversight capacity.
Okay, so taking that's helpful, Jeff. I appreciate that. I want to just ask a further question, which is, and this is really for Harry and Victoria, are we going to have a meaningful opportunity to ask in-depth questions and to receive those answers and then to be able to review them again? Or are we going to face a urgent, we have to do this basically on a pro forma basis because we're out of time and it has to be done today because it's going to council tomorrow and this is the end? Because I've seen that before, and I'm hoping that that's not going to be the case here.
So the idea behind taking an extra week for the regularly scheduled commission meeting is so that we have the opportunity to assemble those packages for you and really kind of walk you through not only the process, but walk you through all the decision points that led to the recommended concessionaire. So you'll have an opportunity to see, at all levels, what we were working with, what decision points were made, what negotiations happened. All of those things will be presented to you in that review on the 22nd.
And what's the deadline for when it needs to go to council?
I believe we are shooting for mid-December, correct, Victoria?
Yes, so we need to have our decision made by the 22nd. I'm sorry. The 24th of November.
Of November.
What happens if it doesn't happen?
So we're bringing it to the commission and requesting the commission's recommendation.
Come from the TV.
I'm kind of on Commissioner Bowman's side. Is there, I guess I'll ask the city attorney, is there a specific state law or ordinance or policy that says that a commissioner or two cannot participate in that?
No.
Okay, and then second, I have known in the past that council members have sat on selection committees. And so wouldn't that logic, if a council member can sit on a selection committee, wouldn't that logic follow to what David's trying to say?
I think that if you're talking about selecting, you know, a new city manager or selecting a new fire station site, I think that we often see that. I think, again, in the procurement world where you are, you know, spending funds and, you know, at least since the Truman era, you've had protections in place and oversight in place to make sure that there isn't fraud and corruption. The I wouldn't say rules, but the expectations and standards and practices are a little bit tighter.
So Jeff, you made one comment. I think, Harry, you may have mitigated this. You're saying that this decision process in this group was there to bring kind of the first recommendation. I'm not sure that's true. That my understanding is they're going to bring the final recommendation. Now, Harry, you've said that you're going to share in the extra time we're taking between the 16th and the 22nd. You're going to share with all of us the original proposals and the different decision points that led to this recommendation. Did I hear that right?
That's accurate. So we will
Okay.
go through the different proposals and how we arrived at the recommendation to the commission. And at that point, the commission can choose, you know, to say, hey, we agree with you, or let's take this back and look at it again.
Okay. So I also think for futures, Jeff, I don't get it, nor do I understand this whole conflict of interest thing. I really feel that that's flimsy that we're letting people from Greater Palm Springs on this decision process and not commissioners. And I think that's something we should take offline. We should have a discussion, because this may not be the first time when the commission has been left out of what is one of our 2 priorities for the year and delegated this to staff and to city people, whatever. I don't get the logic from that. And I'd like to know from a legal point of view, what is that all about? Because it just doesn't make sense to me that we wouldn't have some representation on this decision process. So we should discuss that offline, but it doesn't make sense. And also, and we've discussed this with staff, the fact that this proceeded without any discussion with the commission, this decision process, the selection criteria, whoever wound up on that deal, is something else we're dealing with staff with now. I mean, it should not have happened. We should have been advised about who was on this decision commission or decision process, this group. Now, I'm happy to hear, Harry, your commitment to show us all the process. It's going to take some pre-work and some time for all of us to look through all the proposals and to kind of understand the decision process in each of the phases of this. And I went through this with the Plaza Theater, the selection process for the architects, the Plaza Theater. I was one of those people who did it. So it's a very detailed process. When it works really, really well. I mean, if we're going to open up and be transparent with the commission and all the steps involved in this, that's great. That's great. I still think we should have been on it. But for now, as long as we have access to the whole process so the commission can understand the trade-offs and the decisions, and most importantly, is the final recommendation consistent with the criteria that we suggested, we worked so hard to put together. If we're for sure that this is going to be the case, then we're fine with this. But I think in the future, we should know who's going to be on these commissions ahead of time before it's done. That was never discussed with the commission or shared with the commission. And 2, I think, Jeff, we need to challenge this thinking that there's some conflict of interest. I mean, I really need to understand what this looks like, because I don't get why someone in Greater Palm Springs is on this thing and the commission is not. I don't buy it. I don't understand it, but we'll save that from another day. But for commissioners, you should all know that we will have now, as a result of Harry's update on this, which I think is good news, the opportunity to see everything that was proposed. This is one of our 2 priorities for this year that we stated very, very beginning would be the most important decisions we would make. and we'll have an opportunity to see all this and to move forward. And again, we're going to trust, Harry, that everyone gets to see everything and that we move forward as a result. And we'll do that on the 22nd.
I'm gonna have a caveat to that. So some of these proposals are considered confidential information. And so that might be, so I'm not sure if you're expecting to receive the full proposals from everybody that provided the information. We could do a synopsis of it and write that into our staff report. But there's some information that they strictly have asked that is confidential, that is not something that is provided to the public. So unless it's something that, so I don't mind, I think, and Harry, you know, and Jeff, you definitely let me know if I'm incorrect on this, but there were some proposals that had confidential listed on them. And so it's not going to be something that we're going to give you, here's the whole proposal, take a look at it. It's going to be just a synopsis of what the different proposers had, the relationship, the things that they proposed on, and what was according to the RFP, and how they were selected and going through that RFP process. So I just want to clarify that. So I don't want the commission to think that they're going to get the full proposals from the concessionaires that were not selected for it.
Commissioners?
Sorry, Jeff, did you have something to say?
Go ahead. Let's go to Ken first and then Kevin.
It's my understanding, having submitted hundreds of proposals during my career, that once it goes to a city, it's public information, period.
And I believe at a public records request, if you do a public records request on it, then yes, it can be public information. And
So
Jeff, please
I
correct me
don't,
if I'm wrong.
so here we are, a commission. I mean, from what I understand, I mean, and every time I've applied to an airport or anybody, any governmental agency, I mean, we were always told, once it hits that governmental entity, anybody could see it. Any public person, any private person, period. So that's the way I understand. That's the way I understand.
So there's actually, this is Jeff, there's actually a case on point regarding this situation. And the rule is that it can be held confidentially by the city until the point that you bring it to the final decision-making body, which in this case will be the city council. And so generally you keep that information confidential, at least as to the outside world and the other proposers, so that one of them doesn't get an advantage over the other and the city is able to negotiate and get the best deal for the city. I'll talk to airport staff to see if there is a way to maintain that confidentiality by providing the information to the commissioners, perhaps with a non-disclosure type of a agreement or attestation, which I'm assuming we had our panel sign. Victoria,
How
did
about
we-
closed session?
Victoria, did we do that with our panel?
I don't think so, but I'd have to ask procurement. Actually, no, there was a conflict form that was signed by all of the panelists. So yes, I signed one of them too.
I thought Kim mentioned that there was a non-disclosure type attestation. So there might be a way to do that. And with regard to closed session, that would certainly protect a conversation, but I think we're talking here about the actual document. The commission is asking to see the actual document itself. So let us work with, let me work with airport staff to see if there's a way we can get that to you in a confidential way.
So Jeff, with all due respect, this is another example of, you say that you're bringing, the decision committee is bringing this to us, but there's restrictions on what we're going to see. For all those reasons that may be totally legal and correct, we can't see the whole thing. So in one respect, we're saying that because there's a conflict of interest, members of the committee can't be on the decision committee. And yet we're not getting the whole story. We're not going to get the whole story. We will miss the context of the discussions that happened between these proposals on what is one of the two most important things we have to work on this year. So I want to challenge again the decision process and the logic that went into this. We're not providing the commission with all the context and the valuable insights. I went through this with the Plaza Theater. I know how valuable those discussions are. We're not doing that. We're not providing that to this commission. And if the commission disagrees with the decision or the recommendation for whatever reason, we can't rely on any of the benefit of having our own members who have lots of expertise around here, a lot of political sensitivity, to have been part of this, to look back at Paul or to Ken or somebody else and say, hey, we trust you guys represented us in the decision. So moving forward, if this happens again, we need to talk about this before a committee of decision makers are put in place, because we're not getting the whole story. And now we're going to get a truncated story for all the reasons that may make sense in terms of confidentiality. But that's not what we expected. And that certainly was not part of the deal that we had in moving forward with this being a priority with the city. So we are where we are. We'll move forward. Now, I understand the operations committee. Is that still the case, Victoria? Will the operations committee see this first later this month?
Harry, do you want to take that one?
Our plan was to bring it to the full commission on the 22nd. If we would like to have the operations committee meet on it, I am perfectly fine with it. I don't think staff has a preference either way. But we had planned to bring it to the full commission on the 22nd.
So there was an operations committee scheduled for the third week in October to look at this first. That's my understanding. Has that been changed?
No, there is, this is Jan, there is an operations committee meeting. I don't believe, and I may be wrong on this, but I don't believe that the RFP is on the agenda.
That's correct.
So the first time we're going to see this is the 22nd of November, and there'll be an in-depth discussion of this as part of our meeting. Will anybody else be part of this discussion on the 22nd? Has anybody else been invited to that discussion, Harry?
In terms of external city parties, or what do you mean?
Other city people, city council people, anybody else going to be there but for the commission?
That's just, it's supposed to be a commission meeting, a scheduled commission.
Okay. All right.
But Kevin, the agenda for the operations committee can be changed, because as long as it hasn't been posted, we can add it.
Harry, what do you want to do?
Excuse me.
Patricia, I'm sorry. Patricia.
Yeah, that's okay. To Christina, I have down that we have an airport operations meeting on the 26th of this month. Was that canceled?
No, it has not been
No.
canceled. We are still having that meeting.
Okay, so
The
that's,
agenda will go out tomorrow.
thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner Wiseman, you got a question or comments?
I have 3 comments. So first off, with regard to the confidential information being involved, that's all the more reason for the commission to have at least someone involved in these discussions who can be privy to that information and can advise us in public sessions whether what we should know is potentially affected by something confidential. Second, I think it's possible, certainly, for us to fulfill our obligation to be a check and balance by, if that's truly something we have to fulfill, by being purely an observer and not actually contributing to that deliberation. So that's an option if that is a true legal need that needs to be abided by. I think the last thing we really need to think about now, we're dealing with a logistical issue where realistically the committee needs 2 sessions in order to provide an actual recommendation on this. 1 session to digest the information and ask questions which might require follow-up, and another session after we've digested the information to actually vote on it. And that needs to take place before the deadline that you need to provide an answer to the city council for their last meeting of the year. So I think we have to find a way logistically to make these two meetings happen.
And just to confirm, Kevin, you're saying the meeting of operations plus the meeting on the 22nd at the full commission. Is that you even saying?
That would help. People can attend the operations meeting so that they can digest the information, and then we can vote on the 22nd.
Okay. Now, Harry, that was my understanding. Is that still? Can we still do that?
We can still do that. I believe we can still do that. That's just a matter of making sure that we have the documents and information in place and ready to present to you.
Okay, Victoria, is that reasonable in terms of just having the deliverables ready for the operations committee?
I echo what Harry says. As long as we
Which
can
is,
as long as we can get it ready by then and make, because it's going to be a very long document. So we're making our final determination on Friday. And so I'm sorry, Thursday. And I believe we're meeting that Thursday or that Wednesday. Sorry. So we just got to make sure that it's prepared by then. So hopefully that's something we might be able to take care of. I'm not 100% committing on it, but I'll try my best on it.
okay.
Is that final meeting you're having something we could send someone from the commission to attend and observe?
I can answer that question. No. Once the decision team is put together and they've gone through this process, we had people at the very end of the architectural selection, for the architect selection for the Plaza Theater, wanted to sit in on the final deliberations. You don't have the context of the whole story, and so to have someone even observe really pollutes the decision process, and it raises issues. If someone who's not been part of the whole process is going to raise questions, they just weren't there to hear different points, decision points in the process. So we discussed that, but having gone through the process myself, it's not realistic to do it, and it doesn't help. In fact, it can really have a negative impact when someone who's not been part of the process may have a point of view about it, not having seen it all. But I think if we are okay with, to the extent, Victoria, you can get the thing ready. If we're okay with going with the operations committee meeting, which gives us a chance to put that frame on top of this, and then be prepared for the 22nd and have enough time to read and understand what's available. That may be the biggest and best thing we can get right now, considering the discussion we've had tonight.
Commissioner Payne, you have a comment, and then Commissioner Badillo, you're next, and then Commissioner Smits, you're next.
I will be quick. So I lost you guys in part of the discussion, but I think I get the gist of it, and I concur and probably amplify by a factor of 2 Kevin Cochran's position. We can't let this keep happening. So let's fix this last time. If it takes another month to get this approved with the commission's understanding and enthusiastic endorsement, well, then it bleeds into January. Just the way it is. I've done this for 20 years. I've done literally $1 billion+ procurement. It's very simple. Anybody reviewing this signs an NDA, boom, you're done. It's the same thing that the panel signed to get the responses. So that takes care of any non-disclosure stuff. I agree with Kevin. You got to see everything to have context and do the reviews. So NDA takes care of the whole thing. And then you go into closed session to have a discussion if it's needed or warranted in January. So logistically, you can make all this stuff work. It's very straightforward. It's not rocket science. It's not a big deal. I will tell you that because I talk to everybody and they talk to me, Jeff, if you're still on the call, there is a potential protest around not having concession people on the selection panel. So my question is to Harry, who on the panel had deep concession experience and had done this for multiple years in multiple places from an airport perspective that brought that to the table to do the scoring?
So as Victoria mentioned, we had a member from the Steer Group who is a consultant who works specifically in airport concessions for a number of years on that panel.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Commissioner Badillo, you're up.
Thank you. So Victoria, I've got a question. If we're so worried about some of the information to be disclosed in some of the documentation, why could we not just redact some of the maybe proprietary information that the vendors are worried about disclosing?
Yes, so just to give you an idea, the packages that came through are about 500 pages that have a bunch of detailed information about what their proposal is and who they're working with and what the shared revenue rate is going to be. So that would take a lot of time for us to do that in order for us to redact everything.
So each RFP that was returned is in excess of 500 pages?
Between 400 to 500 pages, at least for the large packages for the retail and food and beverage. The
And
blank
then-
slates are smaller.
And so how many responses were received?
So we received a total of seven responses for food and beverage, retail, and blank slate number 2.
Okay, so that's a maximum of 3,500 pages. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Schmitz?
It's all part of bedtime reading. I'm happy to see that it's back with the Operations Committee. If some of you remember who were there in 2019 and 2020, when we were first dealing with this RFP, it initially and subsequently was going through the Operations Committee. One of my questions would be, yes, we're geared to have the meeting next Wednesday on the 26th. Is a potential slip okay if the documentation is not readily available at that time? I guess what I'm saying is if the Operations Committee's meeting slipped into the next week, would that be fatal? Because we want to make certain that staff has sufficient time to prepare the documentation and prepare for the meeting itself.
So
Barry, do you see any issue with that?
In terms of the logistics, no. I mean, it obviously gives us more time to prepare the documents. The only challenge for me personally is that my mom is having surgery the week after. And so I will be in Kansas City attending to her, but I can certainly log in remotely and answer any questions or provide context as needed.
So why don't we wait and see how things progress on Friday? And Victoria, maybe you give us an update early next week and say, now with the decision made, here's the scope of what's going to take to put this together for the Operations Committee. And then we can back into, if we have to move the date, we move the date. But we're locked in on the 22nd of November. What we're proposing is Operations will see it first, and that we'll all have it. All commissioners will have a chance to prepare for this meeting and do an in-depth dive into the recommendations so that we can be fully prepared to have this discussion on the 22nd. Everybody okay with that? Is there anyone else has any other issues, or can we move forward? Okay.
This is
Jeff.
This is Jeff. This is Jeff. Was the Operations Committee identified in the RFP as a part of the process?
Negative.
No, in fact, the discussion around having the Operations Committee was made clear as soon as we found out, the heads of the commission, that this process had been initiated without representation for the commission. So we found out about this a couple of weeks ago. I don't know, I can't remember, Victoria, exactly when you sent us that update, but the Operations Committee was there, and there was a discussion that it would go to Operations first because it was one of the priorities on their budget, on their agenda.
And I thought I heard Victoria say that the process was outlined for the commission earlier on this year. Was that Was it, did I mishear that?
So that was in the concessions RFP as well as one of our earlier commission meetings back in May.
The process, Jeff, was laid out. What was missing from the process was the decision process and the composition of that team and sharing that information with fellow commissioners on the commission. That was never disclosed to anyone in the commission. In fact, it was only after a comment was made at our strategic planning meeting that the committee was in a dark period that we raised the issue to clarify what that meant and how far we were and who was part of that process. And the rest of the discussion has happened from there.
So the commission wasn't informed back earlier this year that there would not be a committee involvement? And
That is correct. That is correct. And unfortunately, as other commissioners have mentioned tonight, we don't have to go deeper than this. There is a pattern of behavior that we've been trying to manage around appropriate communications with the commissioners, maintaining appropriate swim lanes in terms of what are roles and responsibilities for commissioners and relative to working with staff and with the city. So if there's a heightened sensitivity to this, Jeff, and why we need to be careful as we move forward is because there are other issues where this has happened, where commissioners felt that they deserved to understand what was going on and didn't. And in the context of this particular issue, this is one of our two priorities that was important for Justin and the city council for us to decide. So something as significant as decisions around this should have been discussed with the commission. And that's something we've all agreed to work carefully on and more sensitively moving forward. And I think part of that will be to challenge a legal point of view around what is appropriate, inappropriate, or a conflict of interest, and having that discussion before any type of decision team like this is added. It's just totally inappropriate. This happens after the fact. And frankly, there are a lot of people who really disagree with the legal interpretation that was brought into this decision. And so we're going to talk about this moving forward. And but we don't need to do it tonight. We appreciate you being here and explaining your perspective and the city's perspective, the legal perspective of the city. And now all the council knows what's going on, and the commission knows what's going on. We have two next steps, and moving forward, we'll be more careful. That's all we ask.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering what the consequences of this decision not being given to the city council's last meeting of the year in December would be if this decision were to extend out to early next year. What would occur?
It goes to a new city council. Harry, are there other implications beyond that?
I cannot speak to process implications. Jeff or Kim from procurement could probably speak better to those. I will say that that does impact the transition timeline from the current concessionaire to a potential new concessionaire.
I think we've already missed the last city council meeting of the current council because I believe the transition is the first week in December. Is that correct, Jeff?
The council always has the opportunity at their transition meeting to take up any remaining items before they certify the election results and hand over the gavel to the new council.
What's the date?
And when is that, Jeff? What's that? What's that?
That's expected to be the 15th of December.
So in that scenario, Jeff, the existing city council could move on this recommendation before the new council members are seated or before they take over.
Correct. So they would actually take action on this concession RFP before they adopt the resolution certifying the results, and then they would hand over the gavel.
But I guess I've got a question, Kevin, and I'm not, the politico in all of this, but what difference does it make if it's the current city council makeup and a new city council makeup? It's still going through a process that any council would hopefully recognize. and then vote accordingly. And especially if none of the current city council members nor none of the new city council members, and we don't know who that is, weren't part of the process. So I'm not sure a new council or a current council versus a new council is really that significantly inflammatory to this process and the decision-making.
I think at the end of the day, we have to have confidence. Our hope is we have confidence in this process. I've been through this process before with the city. I was very impressed with it. So there's a lot of rigor that goes into this process. So my hope is that because that process and the rigor behind it and how the clarity that we brought our requirements into this decision process as a commission, that we're going to be celebrating a great recommendation on the 22nd of November. And that whatever city council votes to move forward to this, they're going to be excited about this, as I hope we are as well, to really realize this vision of a local presence with vendors and with food service and others at our airport. The other piece is, and we want to be very sensitive to this, is that on the 30th of April, this kicks in. And one of the reasons why we created this timeline was to make sure that there was enough lead time for whoever succeeds and wins this bid to be able to plan and implement their recommendations and hit the ground running on the 1st of May to make the capital improvements they have to make over the summer, so we're up and running in the fall. So I don't think any of the discussion tonight should impact that timeline at all. And at least I hope so. Now, again, we don't know, but I'm going to choose to take the high road here and say, let's hope that this decision committee has done their work, and that if those criteria that we set up as a commission are reflected in the recommendation, let's go to work. And I think any city council, previous or future city council, will be excited about this because people will have done the work. And I think at this point, that's pretty much all we know. And I'm going to choose to pursue, to continue with that assumption that we'll be able to move forward. Because what we don't want to do is get in a situation where we would have to negotiate with the existing vendor to prolong into the summer because there's some delay in the decision process. Now, if it happens, it happens, but I'm hoping that's not going to happen because we spent a lot of time waiting for May 1st, 2023 to get these changes implemented and start to reflect the local feeling, the local vendors at our airport. So that's what I hope happens. Any other final comments on that? We have a plan. We're going to operations. The date to be decided, Victoria will let us know. We're all teed up for the 22nd, and we'll have time to review all these documents, so we're prepared to have this discussion on the 22nd. And Jeff, thank you for coming, and we look forward to working with you proactively as we move forward on this and hopefully other issues.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is 9C. Is that correct? 9C.
That is correct.
Chris. All right, let's go with 9C, the Budget and Finance Committee. Again, we're 6:48. I apologize for the length of this discussion. If we can be crisp and to the point, I would appreciate it. Let's move to these other items. Budget Committee.
I'll be very crisp. We had some very good meeting this week with the finance staff of the city, and then a budget committee meeting today, and making good progress on optimizing, evolutionizing some reporting. Over to you, Victoria. Is this where you give your budget report, or did you just want to, does that come later?
I believe it comes later, but I could do it now, definitely.
Go for it.
I'm gonna have to sign off at a certain point, so
Dave,
you do it now.
But before we go there, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time in the agenda or another point, but one of the discussions that were brought up today that I was keenly aware of was special projects and the bonds that are out there, and the dollar amount of bonds that we have available for special projects. And so at some point, and I don't know if it's appropriate now or if it's appropriate under commissioner requests and reports, but I think we need to have a bit of a discussion on that And I'm thinking of asking for an ad hoc committee regarding this, because there are some fairly large consequences in terms of the limit of the monies available for capital projects that under the current bonding scenario that was pointed out.
Scott, let me just interrupt. Let me interrupt you here. Yes, we'll put in the commissioner's report. Let's get through this agenda. I saw those emails. I think it's more appropriate there.
Okay.
Since people aren't up to speed of what we're talking about. Let's go through the agenda items that have been shared. Let's bang through it. We'll pick up your comments there on commissioner reports. Let's go ahead, Victoria. Let's do the budget report.
All right, let's see. All right, can you see my screen?
We got it.
All right, great. So I'm just going to quickly go over our net balance for the 4 different funds, our cash reserves, and then highlight something on the grants. So Fund 405 is our customer facility charges. There's a net balance of $506,000. We haven't had any expenses post for this fund. Fund 410 has a net balance of $331,000 and no expenses have posted for this fund. This is our passenger facility charge fund. Fund 415 is our maintenance and operations fund. The net balance is a deficit of $436,000. You will see that our expenditures increased for this period compared to our revenue. So that's why there's a bit of a deficit, primarily because we had a bunch of the the September Q1 post for labor benefits, administrative services, as well as some terminal building operation expenses so that we could gear up for this upcoming season and capacity constraints that we have going into the season. So we are starting to prepare for that. So we have a lot more expenses this month.
And so Victoria, your projection is that we will meet budget, or we will be in the surplus by the end of the fiscal year.
Absolutely. And that's
okay. Just want to make sure that's clear. Okay.
Yes. So primarily that's because, right now we don't budget by month, and it kind of fluctuates because we're on a season. And we're starting to gear up with our passengers, and you'll start to see us shoulder into our peak season with most of our revenues happening in March, April of next year. So,
right, so we're not in trouble.
Yes, exactly. This is just a breakdown of our airline revenue versus our non-airline revenue. So it could be considered aeronautical revenue versus non-aeronautical revenue. As you're aware, our airport parking is one of the highest revenue generators, as well as our lease parking, and then our terminal non-airline rentals and land rentals. This next slide just gives us a breakdown of the operating expenditures. It shows the different cost centers that we have here at the airport that have all of the salaries, benefits, material supplies, and operating expenses. Next is the Fund 416 Airport Capital Projects, where we have a net balance of $491,000. Those are for 4 projects in particular: the common use project, some passenger boarding bridge project where we had to do some additional expenses to the passenger boarding bridge. And then we did a storage build out for airline ticketing offices in the North Ticket Wing. That wasn't a part of the rehabilitation. It was a separate project that we had. And then the last project, sorry, here's my notes, is the LED ribbon. So you may or may have not seen, but we have a new ribbon that's above all of the ticket counters in the north and south ticket wing. They're not active yet with any type of data on there, but we completed the installation for it. We now just need to work with another company to get the digital data up on those screens and get them ready. So those are the 4 projects that we have operating expenditures. Our cash summary is very healthy in all of our funds. We have the grants that are remaining. I just wanted to give y'all an update that we have submitted for reimbursement for our CARES grants, as well as for our CRISA grant. So you will most likely see those revenues coming in next month whenever I present the financials. And that is it for the September financials. Any questions?
Any questions? All right, seeing no questions, going once, going twice. We're going to get back to Scott's discussion. All right, next up, Noise Committee.
I'll make it crisp. We had a whopping 6-minute meeting today with the Noise Committee. No public comments. Christina did acknowledge receipt of 1 email from a member of the public. And Airport Executive Director Barrett shared with us that for the period of July through September, the airport received a total of 4 noise complaints, including both commercial general and military operations. Very normal for the time of year, and we should expect that those will increase as flights do for the season. And that's it. I stand by for questions.
Questions, please. Anyone questions for the Noise Committee? Okay, seeing no hands, let's move on. Thank you so much for that. Marketing update, Daniel.
Oh, let me get my screen shared real quick. All right, being short and sweet. That's the right one. You guys see the right one, right? Okay. Anyhow, all right. So quick update on the logo. We had public sessions on September 28th and October 6th. Community stakeholder meeting we held on October 10th. We had a great response received from the public, over 500 public surveys. Our consultants are reviewing all the feedback, and we are going to meet with them after the review and determine next steps from there. Air service update. Passenger numbers in September were up 19.1% over September 2021, which is another new record. 14 passenger records have now been set since June of 21. We have also officially surpassed our total passenger count for calendar year 2021. And the way we were scheduled out, I fully expect us to have a record year based on how we are scheduled right now. 2019 was our previous record year, and I would bet that this year is going to end up being our new record. We attended Roots World 2022 in Las Vegas this week with Visit Greater Palm Springs as an air service development conference. We met with 16 different airlines, 7 airlines that currently serve PSP. All of the existing airlines we met with are very happy with our market. An update since our last meeting, Alaska unfortunately canceled Austin, Texas. The route will end on November 30th. However, it's quick to note that we are not losing service to Austin, as American will begin operating on November 17th through November 19th. They will return on December 15th, and they will run daily, I believe, almost into June, if I remember correctly. Southwest, they are going to be taking, they started Las Vegas with 1 daily, went to 2 double daily in July, and in March, they're going to do 3 daily for March and April in the height of our season. Their current schedule is out till mid-April, so when they publish that, their full April schedule, I'm sure our April 2022 seat count will be more than we had last year. If you guys know from the last commission meeting, we were showing down, but that's again because Southwest hasn't fully published. So not concerned about that because we should exceed April 21 or 22, excuse me, when they do publish that schedule. Scheduled departing seats, we have October is up to 1.8% over 21, excuse me. November 22 is up 18.6%. December is up 20.7% over October 21, which is again why I'm saying this is probably going to be a record year for us as long as the passengers show up, and so far they have been. Looking ahead to 2023, January is up 25% over January 22, February up 19.7, March up 9.7. I went ahead and removed April simply because the Southwest schedule I found out isn't fully published, and so I'll put those back in whenever that schedule does come out. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Daniel.
Yes.
I reviewed the RFP for the marketing, branding and logo project. Is there a project timeline for that that you can share with us? Because I was impressed by the extent of the scope of work, and it's extensive, and it's really hard to understand kind of how this project is going to unfold without seeing a project timeline, which seems appropriate for a project of that scope and expense.
Well, first, thank you on the scope of work. I did the research and wrote that myself, and I consulted with some industry peers of mine, so I'm glad you liked it. Second, we had an original timeline of 4 months. We were hoping to be ended in November, but giving the missteps in the branding and having to add the public meetings, the 2 public meetings with stakeholders, we are now not on a schedule. We're hoping to launch in spring of 2023. Also, the original cost was, if you guys remember, if you awarded, it was going to be $149,000. Those additional required public meetings is adding another $31,000 to the project cost.
So reiterating my question, can we see a project timeline for what is now an $880,000 project with multiple phases and scope of work? Not now on this call, we obviously don't have time, but I think, again, like the concession project where sort of things seem to reveal themselves that we caught up on later, and again with this, the logo and being presented to the council that we caught up on later, I think it would be prudent for staff to share with the commission what the project timeline revised, and if you're not done revising it, maybe in time for the next commission meeting, you could share a timeline with us, just so we're clear and have fewer misunderstandings and have more clarity.
Okay, so first of all, I do want to correct you. It's not 880,000. It's now 180,000.
I didn't say 880,000. Daniel, I'm sorry, you must have misheard me, because 149 plus 30 is about 180.
Well, sorry, I heard 880. The timeline, for which we, as again, direction from the chair and vice chair, we are not steering down timeline right now. We're taking it step by step. So previously we agreed to do the public meetings and stakeholder meetings, then review the data, and then look forward to the next steps after that. So we have not refined the timeline just yet. And I don't know quite when I'll finish. I'll be meeting with Aviatrix probably in the next, actually I'm meeting with them tomorrow. We'll see what the update is on there. And then I will be on vacation next week, and we'll touch base in November and go from there. So if I have an update by November, I will provide that.
Great, thank you.
Daniel, I'm sorry, David, okay. Daniel, just a question, and we don't need to go into a lot of depth. I just want to know, have the public sessions provided valuable input you think will make a difference on where you'll land on this project?
I haven't seen everything, just a few kind of just very high level details. I've not gone into deep information from Aviatrix yet. The vast majority of the comments that they stated are actually regarding more towards the state of the terminal and the facilities, not so much just the logo. And a lot of the majority of the over 500 public statements we received, a majority of those were in agreement with it being more of a Coachella Valley than just Palm Springs singular. And that's about all we have right now. Again, I'm going to be speaking with them tomorrow, and then we'll be setting up a meeting probably in November. But I want to see, they're going to give me an update tomorrow, and then we'll go from there. So I'll wait to meet with them in the morning.
When you're ready to have that, to provide those updates, is your intent to go to the marketing committee first before you take it to the rest of us?
Yeah, with Chair Burke, to have discussions with him on that. So yeah, we were planning to do that.
Okay, all right. So between you and Todd, let us know and how we're supposed to get engaged. Todd, do you have any final comments?
No, I mean, I would echo, I sat in like many of my fellow commissioners did on the public meetings. I also sat in on the stakeholder meeting. I have not yet been privy to all of the details that Aviatrix has found. Of course, the stakeholder meeting, much more engaged and much more passionate comments than we did in the public meetings. It did definitely feel a little bit more like they were more concerned about the airport and operations and airport in general, and not necessarily the function of the logos. I'm happy if we need to, if it doesn't work for timing and we need to take this to the full commission, happy to do it, and also thrilled to get the ad hoc marketing committee together on fairly short notice and provide that update to them first. So
All right,
let's
why
just-
don't we
let's plan
rely
on
on the two? That's cool. You two figure it out and let us know. Just give us enough lead time.
You got
But
it.
I think what I'm taking away from this is we had the public input. We've listened to the public, so we've had a chance to gather their ideas. Now it's in process, and you two will tell us when we're ready to take next steps. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All
Our
right.
goal now
Any
is
other
to
questions?
Sorry.
Go
I was
ahead.
gonna
I'm
say,
sorry,
we're
Dan.
shooting for hopefully we're kind of goal now for spring 2023 launch. But again, that's going to be determined over the next probably month or two.
Sounds good. Daniel, thank you. Appreciate that update. With no other questions on this, I think, Christina, are we moving to strategic planning update?
Yes, that is correct. We're at item 10D, strategic planning session follow-up.
Okay, Harry?
I don't have much on the strategic planning session follow-up. I know that Victoria still is working on finalizing the survey results. And actually, it looks like she has information as I'm speaking, so I'll turn it over to Victoria.
Victoria, please.
Hello again. So let me know if you can see my screen.
We can.
Okay, so I'm sorry this was put together very quickly, so it doesn't have a lot of detail in it, but this is just based off of our results that we received from all the commissioners that participated in the ranking of all of the projects for the next 5, 10, and 20 years. I have the detail on the next few slides, but the teal column, the first column, is our 5-year, and it pretty much shows the focus of what the commission is interested in. Primarily the terminal. So there's a bunch of terminal projects that we have proposed at our strategic planning session, and commissioners selected 39 different projects that they would like to see happen over the next 5 years. And then in the airfield, they have 17 projects, and then in the landside area, 13 projects. And then for the 10-year, something, projects to happen over the next 10 years, the terminal came in at the #1 ranking, and then landside, airside, and then general aviation. And then there was a complete split for projects in the 20-year time frame for the landside and terminal building. Go to the next slide. So some of the areas of focus, obviously, were the air side. So that came in at #1. I'm sorry, not #1, that one's #2. So we had things that needed to happen to the airfield, like the perimeter fence rehabilitation, the airfield construction and design, the hotspot study, some rehabilitation for the connectors, which have 2 phases, construction and design of it. And then the actual construction of any type of hotspot mitigations, as well as the remain overnight airfield parking spaces. Same with landside. One of the biggest items that was a main focus was the consolidated rental car facility. So the design of that. And then next comes in the electric charging stations, the zero emission buses, the employee parking lot and employee lot design and pavement, as well as a property acquisition and parking revenue system. So the one that did have the most selection for the projects was the terminal. So the design and construction of the main terminal facade restoration, the arrivals of the baggage claim renovation and expansion, the design and construct, the design and construct of the baggage handling system, terminal building expansion, the federal inspection station, design and construct, main terminal expansion, construct the bag screening TSA checkpoint, then the master plan and GIS study, the outbound baggage handling system and passenger screening facility expansion, design and construct, concession space. Our master plan will help with that. The HVAC infrastructure replacement, regional jet concourse expansion and constructing passenger boarding bridges, ADA improvements, and restroom capacity and ADA renovations. So that was what was proposed in year 5, based off of the commissioner's selection. In year 10, we had the airfield, so design and construct the small runway, rubber and paint removal equipment. And then on the land side, covered solar public parking, install a solar farm, install modal transportation facility, redesign the VIP to the vehicle inspection plaza to expand the alternate control center and incorporate landside operations, main terminal access road crosswalk improvements. And then in the terminal, the maintenance facility, conference meeting rooms, the firefighting ARF station, the airfield firefighting station, the Bono tent roof replacement, demo the dilapidated hangars and buildings that are located on airport property, a new badging and testing office, new control center, Bono flooring, resurface exterior concrete floor, new fire alarm system, main terminal minus the ticketing, and the Bono and RJ terminals. And then last was the projects to be completed in 20 years, such as the landscaping improvements around the airfield, noise mitigation, landside wayfinding improvements, Alejo lot upgrades, repave lots A through D, the employee sidewalk improvements, and then for the land side, an industrial park that'll help with revenue, vertiport, domestic water sewer infrastructure enhancements, and the lab waste dump site. So those were just what our commissioners were really interested in for projects over the next 5, 10, and 15 years.
So the question I have is both to you and to Christina. Have you summarized not only this input, but the other input for the to hand off to the consultants for the long-term plan, including the notes that we shared, Christina, with you at the end of the meeting?
So we are currently working with well, if it is awarded to this company, we are going to be working with them on providing our current capital improvement plan, so they're aware of what kind of projects we have planned for the future. And then we are going to share what the commissioner's concerns are and recommendations for capital projects with them, and they're going to build that into a big master plan and make sure that's incorporated in there.
We're kind of bleeding into the master plan, the next agenda item, but I just want to make sure that the report coming out of our strategic planning meeting, that that it is memorialized and that it's someplace for us to look at moving forward. It would include what you just presented, Victoria, and also the notes from our meeting. So as long as we ensure that we don't lose those notes, so that we have a paper trail on what happened in that day, that would be helpful.
Vice
Can we
Chairman
just
Corbin,
confirm that's going to happen?
I will be doing detailed minutes.
Okay.
There will be detailed minutes. It's just, I did not have enough time to get the minutes we had on the agenda done and that meeting also. They were both lengthy meetings, but I should have those completed for the next commission meeting.
Cool. And Christina, those include the notes that I presented to you with all the comments that we had for the summary?
Yes, that is correct.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, let's just do master plan and then we'll open up for questions. Any additional issues on the master plan, either Victoria or Harry?
I was gonna go through the master plan timeline with the group, if that's okay. And essentially where we are is we are in the selection process for a consultant. We're at the end of that process, actually. So we've identified a potential consultant to lead that effort for us. We believe they're capable of doing so. We are working through the negotiation on cost at the moment and scope. The next steps, once we've kind of nailed that down, we do have to take this to the airlines for approval. The cost of the project does exceed our threshold. So under our current agreement, we will have to take it to the airlines for approval. It'll then come to the commission and then subsequently the city council for approval. The idea is to start the planning process probably around the December, January timeframe. I've already spoken with Chairman Dada. what we intend to do is to assemble a working group specifically for the master plan. And that will involve a handful of commissioners as well as representative from Visit Greater Palm Springs, potentially other representatives from the city, such as the planning department, et cetera. And that group will help facilitate the planning process as we go along the way. So that's where we currently are with that. And that's all I have on the master plan update. Are there any questions?
Any questions, anyone? Scott, please.
Yeah, what is the time frame that you're thinking of in terms of the completion of the master plan? Are you thinking a year, 2 years?
We scoped the project for a 30-month process. It appears that all the respondents thought it was aggressive but doable. What we also did was we phased the project. So the idea was to focus on the terminal facility first, all the constraints that we have with the terminal, the roadways, the identification of a consolidated rental car facility. They would go through that process. And then once we solidified that piece of it, then focus on the airfield in a subsequent phase of the project. So right now, we're calling it 30 months. That's obviously subject to a couple of things. The aeronautical forecast has to be approved by the FAA. We don't know how long that process is going to take. So there may be some sliding there. The other thing is just the environmental component of that and how long that process takes.
So do you think it would be wise we do a similar process that we're doing? Because this is, I think, as important as the concession process. That we do a thing where we send it to a committee first and other commissioners can listen to the discussion at the committee, get themselves familiarized with it so that it doesn't hit people cold on a commission meeting, and then move forward at the commission meeting and they can vote on what recommendation they'll make to the city council.
Are we talking about in terms of the selection process?
Well, the actual selection of the consultant themselves.
So that one we will have to, there's some issues there, and that's essentially that we've already kind of published what the determination will be. So that one I'll have to take back to Jeff and make sure that we can do that. So I'll have to owe you, that's an IOU on that.
Okay.
One. I don't know.
All right, I'm just thinking that sounded like a good process for the concession. And this, as I feel, is very important. And we can probably follow a similar process to help the commission and help everybody get on board with the decision points that were made in the final selection of the vendor. So just
Sure.
a suggestion.
Now, and to be transparent about an FAA master plan process, so that's actually very strictly governed by the FAA in terms of how the selection is made. So there's a difference there too. So I just want to put that out there.
Okay, that's cool. It'd be interesting to see what their constraints are, if any.
Commissioner Payne,
questions?
you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Harry, I thought I heard you say that you're negotiating price. So it sounds like you've already selected somebody, assuming you can get to price. Can you share who you selected?
Not at this time. It's still an open process.
Well, if you agree on price, then it's a done deal, right?
Correct. Correct.
What's your time frame for getting that done?
We believe within the next week or so.
So by next commission meeting, you'd say it's yada, yada. That's who's doing our master plan.
That's accurate.
Okay, fair enough. We had a budget meeting this morning and had a long conversation around bonds. And I submitted something, Christina, to you and the chair and Kevin and Harry. I'll defer it to the next meeting. We've gone on very late tonight, but would love an update on those 11 projects that were bond funded, just wherever they are. So if we could have that next time, that'd be helpful. Or if we could have it in Jan's operations meeting, that would be great too.
Just a comment on that. I think we should defer that. The documents that you shared with us, both Scott and John, are really interesting, and I think they have some very important questions. What I'd like to do is make sure we prepare, excuse me, so that we can
Bless you.
prepare this information, share it with the commission. Let's get the commission smart about this first, and then we'll have an in-depth conversation. I just think we need to do more pre-work to really understand some of the questions and make sure that all of us are kind of smarter about it before we eat up a lot of commission time doing it. But I'll commit to put it on a future agenda and see if we can work with the staff to prepare to get those questions answered, be part of the pre-work process in a discussion in one of our meetings. Can we do that?
Well, is it, we've got a month, right? So I'm deferring it to the November commission meeting. Is that not enough time, Kevin?
I think it'll be enough time to do it for that commission, and we'll just for that meeting.
Super.
And
Okay.
Yeah, and again, we'll take a look at that pre-work, see what it looks like. The intent would be to add it onto the 22nd, unless that agenda, for reasons we've discussed, issue earlier becomes gone with the wind. I hope that's not the case. But yes, let's make that our affirmation and make that happen. But then we'll get a lot smarter and give everybody else in the commission a chance to have the insight that you've brought forward.
Okay, fair enough. So, so you will take the action item to put on the agenda for the commission meeting in November, a discussion of where we are with the projects that were bond funded that I identified on page 4 of the public bond document.
Correct. And Harry, I
Okay.
hope we have enough time between now and then to provide that information. It seems like we did, but I wasn't in all that email chain. Is that realistic, Harry?
That I'm not sure. I would have to take that back to Victoria and the team and ask about, because we've got a couple of different things kind of colliding at the same time. So we'll work on it.
And
Let us
again,
know.
just to clarify for the commission, Kevin, it's done or it's not done. If it's not done, where is it? That's the level of detail. That's it. But I await
Understood.
hearing what Harry has to say.
Understood.
Then just a clarification. Harry, tell me if this is a correct assessment. Per Nancy in the bond meeting, we're using PFC money to pay back the bonds. The bonds are 22 million and change. Based on where we are, we have headroom of maybe another 10 million that we could use PFC money for if we so chose. But clearly the master plan has significantly more projects and monies allotted to it. If I did my sums right, it's like 150 million year 1 through 5, 750 million in 20 years if we did everything that we have on the plan, realizing that we're not going to do everything, but we'll do something. So with that said, then is it not true that we must go to compensatory and get off of residual, so we now have the ability to go to the bond market and then pay off those bonds? Because the 10 million headroom under the PFCs that we've got now and the structure being residual, we simply can't get the money unless the city wants to go into debt. So from an airport perspective, we're done.
John, time out. This is the level of detail that I don't want to eat up a lot of time when the rest of us don't have the context of what you're talking about. Can we please take that question and other things related to bonds and move them to our next meeting and do the proper pre-work with the rest of the commission so you know what you're talking about? I mean, this is way over my head and we haven't had a chance to study it. And I think it's unfair to put the rest of us through this time until we have a chance to really prepare. So can we agree to postpone that? We'll put it on the next agenda, and we'll have those questions part of the pre-work so that everyone's prepared to answer and we know what you're talking about. Can we do that, please?
Okay, Kevin.
All right, thanks. All right. And I commit that we'll get it on the next meeting. All right, projects, capital improvement plans, any updates? This is 10F. Harry?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of projects that we started on that are stalled. The reason they're stalled, well, there are two reasons they're stalled. The first is frankly just because of operations. So our common use project, we had anticipated that would be a lot further along. That has not moved as quickly as we thought it would move, mostly because of lead time on supplies. So We're still getting IT equipment in and things into the airport that should have been here over the summer. So in our discussions with the airlines, it was determined that we would attempt to phase that project over the next many months in an effort to make sure that we don't create an undue burden on the airlines in their operations going into the season. We'll see where we land on that, but what it looks like is we're going to start with the regional jet concourse, try and get that completely converted in terms of the IT use of it. We'll extend that out to the ticket counters, and then we'll focus on the Bono at a later date, probably after the season ends sometime in May or in June. The same applies to our restroom project, just the lead time to get materials, costs have gone up. So we're reworking that project as well. It's still moving forward, but it won't move forward while we're in the middle of season. It just doesn't make sense to put anybody through that. So some of our projects are sliding. A lot of it has to do with supply chain issues, but we are committed to continuing on with those projects. What that does is it does have a multiplying effect on the projects that we have scheduled for next year. So as we start to get into the 2023 operating season, our focus is going to be on getting a lot of the study elements of those projects done, because that's a lot easier to manage versus the actual operations and construction parts of those projects. So we've got people working on wildlife studies right now and on hotspot studies, hotspot being the geometry of the airfield. But we won't do so much construction. We won't get into that until we're certain that A, we have the manpower to accommodate it, because we're still down 20 FTEs, and B, that it won't impact aircraft operations or airline operations in the airport. So that's where we are in terms of capital improvement updates at the moment.
All right. Any questions on that? Okay. Let's move on. Commissioner requests and reports. Scott, we had the conversation about putting the bond issue in our next meeting. We will work out with you and David and John to make sure we have the right questions and the information, give the staff time to put that on, assuming we have the bandwidth to do it for the 22nd.
Okay, my question though is a little, my concerns are a little more versus the compensatory versus residual airport process. It's not necessarily the special projects, but they are connected because they follow hand in hand, but they are two separate topics. And so how would you like to handle that?
I think we have to work with you guys and with David and the budget committee to see how we craft that into an agenda proposal and let you guys provide the pre-work that's required for us to understand it and list of questions.
Okay.
And I think, Scott, that'll give the staff enough time to prepare. And if it's out of scope because of just bandwidth, considering what we have to do in the next 30 days, we'll push it off. If it becomes something that's urgent in terms of something that will either get us in or out of funding before the end of the year, we'll accelerate that. But what I would ask is that you and David and John and others on the budget committee come back and just make it tight, get us smart before we use our time here to deal with it, so we know what you're talking about.
All right, that sounds good.
Fair enough?
Yeah, and then I have another request if possible.
Go ahead.
I would like to ask for Harry or for Christina to give us a list of the commissioners and their terms. So we have no kind of way of doing that, and I am sure the airport keeps that because that's important. So it would be really good to get a list of the commissioners and what their terms are.
As far as when their terms expire, or what kind of information are you looking for?
Well, yeah, I mean, their terms. So if they started in, I don't know, say for me, I started last year. So, you know, it would be from 2021 to 2023 or 20.
So you want to see start and end is what I'm asking.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. So if we could do that. And then the second part of that is per the city attorney's comments at the last meeting that he was at, not today's meeting, but the last meeting. He indicated that it was legal and for us to get the email addresses of each of the commissioners. And so I would like to request that we get those as well.
Hey, Christina, I want to chime in, just let you know, on our website, flypsp.com, or the airport commission section, it does have every commissioner listed with their term expiration dates already.
It's
Correct. It has, yeah, it has the expiration, but it doesn't have the start.
Right, that's what I wanted to see the start, yes.
That's why I clarified with you to make sure. Okay.
And does I know we've asked for this before. In light of Chef's comments 2 meetings ago, is there any issue now with his clarification of sharing our contact information with everyone else? Harry?
Harry, I guess my only concern would be, should we ask each commissioner personally if they'd like to have that done, would be my only question.
And I would echo that. I think it would just be up to the individual commissioners whether they want their information shared.
Can we ask that then? For commissioners who are on this call, if you have a problem with sharing your email information with other commissioners, will you please send a note to Christina? Otherwise, anyone who has not said yes, and we can go to the folks who are off this meeting on a one-off basis, ask them the same thing. And so when we publish this list, we'll have a list of all of our email addresses. And if someone is uncomfortable for whatever reason doing it, their name will be on the list with no email address. And then we'll know and we respect that. Can we do that?
And also, I may have an email address for a commissioner that maybe they don't want out. Maybe there's a different one they prefer out. So I can work with the commissioners and make sure I have the information they want published if they wish to do so.
And the other thing is that, yeah, that would be do it. And the city clerk did indicate to me that they're willing to give, if a commissioner doesn't want a personal email address, they're willing to set up a city email address that people can get their information to. But that's adding another email address to, I'm sure, people's other email addresses, and that may not be the most ideal thing, but that was offered as a solution by the city clerk.
Not to make a long meeting longer, but I'd like to respectfully just ask Commissioner Miller, what is the purpose? What do you want to do with, for example, my email address? What cannot be done through the normal course of commission business?
Okay, for example, someone had asked about putting together speakers and getting the word out to people about we can do a kind of an informal speakers bureau about the airport and things of that nature. And I had some suggestions on some things, but I could not send it to the commissioner that was asking for that because I had no way to get that information or get that information to that commissioner. And so at the time of that request, the rule of thumb was that only the city could have communications between the commissioners. And as we learned, that wasn't the case. That's not the Brown Act. And so, I had some great ideas for that commissioner who was asking for that input, but couldn't get it to that commissioner because I didn't have any way to contact them.
Thank you.
For example, when I sent this I saw the note about the Austin airport and what they've done with local brands. And so the process I followed before this, Scott, I sent it to Christina. Christina sent it out to all of you because I don't have everybody's email address. So I know that's the protocol we followed before. And I think if, like I said earlier, if commissions have some issues about sharing private or personal emails, we can either offer them the opportunity to have a city email or respect their decision not to have this in the list. And then we'll take it from there. I think most people will participate. Todd, are you okay with that?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
I want to chime in too. I'm sorry, I don't feel the need to give out our emails when we have our contact here at the meetings and through channels of official city through Christina. Just my opinion.
Gerald, and we respect that. That's your choice. Any other commissioner feels that way, absolutely respect your choice. And we'll give it a shot, Scott, and see where we wind up.
Also,
Daniel?
can I chime in for a little bit? When Commissioner Miller mentioned a speakers bureau, that is actually part of the established marketing communications plan we had created by our consultant that is in process. If we're going to do that, we need to make sure everyone's going to have a unified message. So we're all on together on the same points and have the correct information that should be vetted through the airport's marketing department, city communications, and working with the chair of the marketing committee. So just FYI.
Thank you for that clarification.
Right, now this was just for locations of where they might show up.
Okay. All right. Okay to move forward? All right. Next are any other reports, city council reports, Harry?
No, there are not. Thank you.
Christina, anything else?
No, just a reminder that we are adjourning to the November 22nd date.
Okay. Perfect. Before we ask for a motion to end, just want to take this opportunity to thank you again for your patience and your time tonight. I think that we continue to look for a path forward. We're looking for best practices. We're looking to get more people engaged and make sure we're smart before we talk about options or items here on our agenda. Optab and I are committed to try to make these as efficient as we possibly can. Thank you for the time you're spending in your subcommittees. There is a lot of great ideas that are floating around here. And if there's anything consistent across all of this is our commitment to make sure this is the very best airport it can possibly be. And so as we have our highs and lows in these discussions, we won't keep our eye off the ball. And that's where we're trying to take this airport. And I just want to thank you and the staff for the work you've done tonight and for your patience in working a few extra minutes and all the options we talked about. And we will get smart before the next commission meeting, both about the RFPs and about our bonding process and other topics that may come on board. We will only use commissioner time for topics that we're prepared to discuss. So I ask your indulgence to help get us smarter before we add things to the agenda. And promise you that once we get on the agenda, we'll give people ample time to share their thoughts and ideas. So with that, thank you for your time tonight. And can I have a motion to end this meeting?
So moved.
Ken, second?
Second.
Awesome, Todd. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Have a great night. Have a great week. We have an exciting month coming forward.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
All right, bye now. Thanks, Christina.